tangible cultural heritage that you can experience. 한소리, 제주 해녀 diving, 김장. Make some unforgettable memories while having fun.
Last but not least, the advanced level. It's the memory of the World Register. Korea possesses an extensive documentary heritage. Korea is serious about documentation and preservation.
A tour of Korean cultural heritage will become a legacy of your own.
Why not make your own Korean cultural heritage travel itinerary?
Isn't it fascinating?
A day of mass chaos in the political circle. Ruling party leader Han Dong-hoon calls for the swift suspension of Yoon's presidential powers, signaling an about-face. Soon after, Yoon and Han met behind closed doors, followed by fuss and confusion at Parliament over the president's potential appearance there. The Defense Ministry rejects the rumor that there could be another martial law decree, saying any such orders would be dismissed. Over in Sweden, a special week begins to honor this year's Nobel Prize laureates, among which is South Korean author Han Gang. Tonight, we go live to the scene. It's December 6th, 8 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We start at the Parliament yet again. Today, we heard something rather unexpected from the ruling party's chief related to the opposition-led impeachment move against President Yoon. We connect live to our National Assembly correspondent Lee Si-hoo. But first, Si-hoo, how's it looking there?
Right, Jung-min, the tensions are rising here at the National Assembly as we near the hour that the opposition plans to move forward with the impeachment motion to impeach President Yoon Suk-yeol. I'm standing right here at the hall that was raided by the armed forces just 2 nights ago to prevent any further emergencies like that. Tonight, the Assembly lawmakers and their aides are here on standby. Outside the parliamentary building, they parked up buses and personal vehicles to prevent any airborne troops from from landing here tonight by helicopter. Outside the parliamentary building, people are gathering up more and more in real time to participate in a peaceful candlelight protest. Now, throughout the day, the rival parties held hours of emergency meetings. We're waiting for the results of both the ruling People Power Party and the main opposition Democratic Party's internal meetings. The PPP is taking a break at the moment. They say they have not decided on a consensus just yet. The DP meeting is ongoing. Now, this follows a surprise turn of events from earlier today. This morning, ruling party leader Han Dong-un, who had previously refrained from pushing for Yoon's impeachment, shared a slightly different stance, saying that the president needs to be suspended from performing his duties. Other PPP members also spoke out and urged the president to explain in detail his reasonings for declaring martial law. Early in the afternoon, Han Dong-un also visited President Yoon at his official residence for a talk. Han hasn't spoken much about the details of the talk, but said that the president isn't planning on any special action.
Raishihu, what do we expect to see from tonight until the vote?
Right, so the DP is firm on its plan to push forward with the impeachment motion. But as for the time, they've originally set up for 7 p.m. tomorrow night, but now they're expecting it to be a little earlier than that at 5 p.m. But this needs to be negotiated with the PPP. Now, this has been confirmed by the National Assembly Speaker's office as well, which say that the time is also tentative to change. Now, Speaker Woo Won-sik warned in an urgent conference this afternoon that in the event of another martial law declaration, the lawmakers would risk all they have to block it. Listen in.
We will, without fail, guard the National Assembly and democracy. I ask all public officials in their positions to protect the Constitution.
Who, during the conference, also asked the members of the military and the police to keep their place and dignity as citizens of South Korea. Jung-min?
Our National Assembly correspondent Lee Si-hoo, thank you. Up next, our Choi Soo-hyung walks us through the impeachment voting procedure at Parliament that looks imminent.
On Thursday, 6 opposition parties jointly submitted a motion to impeach President Yoon to the National Assembly. According to the National Assembly Act, the vote must take place between 24 and 72 hours after submission, which means it will occur between Friday and Sunday Korean time. The opposition has scheduled the vote for Saturday afternoon, appearing to have decided to wait for any objections from the ruling party. The Democratic Party explained that this delay gives the ruling People Power Party enough time to consider the motion. For the impeachment to pass, at least 2/3 of the 300 lawmakers, at least 200, must approve it. Currently, there are 192 lawmakers, the main opposition Democratic Party and others, who support the motion to impeach the president. This means at least 8 votes are needed from the ruling People Power Party for the motion to pass. As tactical moves continue regarding impeachment for President Yoon, if the motion passes in the National Assembly on Saturday, it will mark the 3rd presidential impeachment motion in South Korea's constitutional history, following Roh Moo-hyun in 2004 and Park Geun-hye in 2016. If the National Assembly approves the motion, the final decision on impeachment will then be determined by the Constitutional Court. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
The acting defense minister today dismissed claims of a second martial law decree amid related rumors. This comes as controversy grows over what happened earlier this week as several military commanders and intelligence officials speak out. Our correspondent Kim Jong-sil has more.
Acting Defense Minister Kim Sun-ho addressed concerns over the possibility of a second martial law order, denying claims raised earlier Friday, stating that they were completely untrue.
Even if there were any demands for martial law to be declared, the Ministry of Defense and the Joint Chiefs of Staff would never accept them.
Minister Kim apologized for the confusion caused by this week's martial law declaration. He pledged full cooperation with the upcoming investigation by the prosecution, including dispatching military prosecutors for a joint inquiry. Kim also instructed relevant agencies to preserve original documents and prevent any tampering with them. Later, the Ministry of Defense removed 3 senior military officers linked to the December 3rd imposition of martial law. The commanders of the Capital Defense, Special Warfare, and Defense Security Commands have been suspended. 2 of these 3 commanders have spoken out. In a YouTube interview with lawmaker Kim Byung-ju, Army Special Warfare Command Commander Kwak Jong-gun revealed that former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun instructed him to remove lawmakers from the plenary session and that President Yoon followed up on the operation. Capital Defense Command Commander Lee Ji-nu also stated that President Yoon contacted him to inquire about the National Assembly situation. Hong Jang-won, first deputy director of the National Intelligence Service, revealed that after martial law was declared, President Yoon personally instructed him to, quote, arrest everyone, clean it all up. This sparked controversy over a potential abuse of power. Hong made the statement during his appearance at the National Assembly, fueling even more scrutiny over the unfolding situation. Earlier, the presidential office denied any orders to detain lawmakers had been made, but quickly retracted the statement. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
Multiple agencies are ramping up their investigations into allegations surrounding Tuesday night's confusion. President Yoon faces accusations of insurrection, raising questions about constitutional violations and government accountability. Our Moon Hae-ryun has the details.
The South Korean prosecution has established a special investigation headquarters to lead the inquiry into the allegations against President Yoon. This task force, made up of 20 prosecutors headed by Park Se-hyun, chief prosecutor of the Seoul High Prosecutor's Office, includes military prosecutors for enhanced expertise and will be established at the Seoul Eastern District Prosecutor's offices. The move reflects the gravity of the case, with President Yoon himself under scrutiny. This case stems from accusations filed by opposition parties and civic groups, and the charges include insurrection and abuse of power. Insurrection is an organized attempt to overthrow a government or its leaders, and the president in South Korea can be impeached if found guilty of insurrection as it violates constitutional law. Despite legal challenges regarding jurisdiction, the prosecution concluded that the case falls within their investigative authority due to overlapping charges. Meanwhile, the National Police Agency has launched its own 120-member task force to investigate the case. The police disclosed that it has received 4 separate complaints related to the martial law declaration, involving figures such as President Yoon, now former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun, Interior Minister Lee Sang-min, and top police officials. The police claims jurisdiction over insurrection-related investigations and has expressed its commitment to accelerating the probe. The Corruption Investigation Office, or CIO, is also involved, focusing on related charges like abuse of power. While the agency cannot investigate insurrection directly, it has mirrored the prosecution and police by issuing a travel ban on former Defense Minister Kim, who is accused of advising the president to declare martial law. Adding to the complexity, the Democratic Party has proposed a bill for a special prosecutor to oversee the case. A special prosecutor is appointed when there is a conflict of interest that could prevent the prosecuting authority from investigating a case, and the bill is expected to be reviewed in the National Assembly on December 10th. If approved, the special prosecutor would take over all investigative materials from existing agencies. However, delays could arise. The president's refusal to appoint a special prosecutor would not carry penalties, and assembling a new investigative team could take months. Experts warn that overlapping investigations could lead to inefficiencies and confusion. With multiple agencies now engaged in this high-profile case, the investigations into the martial law incident mark an unprecedented moment in South Korea's constitutional history. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Shortly after the president has declared martial law, armed troops were deployed to the headquarters of the National Election Commission. Questions are being raised about the motive behind this move. An Sung-jin reports.
The National Election Commission held an emergency meeting on Friday morning regarding the deployment of troops to the committee building after the declaration of the martial law decree. During the briefing, the NEC chairperson stated that around 300 soldiers had entered the committee building and that the troops were there for more than 3 hours.
The NEC is an independent institution, and what the troops have done is a clear violation against the Constitution. We will make sure to take legal action for what happened while making sure to monitor any additional damage.
This comes after troops headed to the National Election Commission only 7 minutes after the declaration of the martial law decree and an hour before the storming of the National Assembly. By a little past midnight on Wednesday morning, already more than 100 soldiers were at the Central Commission building in Gwacheon City and nearly 200 more at other locations. That's slightly more than were at the National Assembly. Employees say the troops entered the Information Management Bureau where personal information is stored.
Telephones were confiscated from 5 people that night, including night shift workers. An entrance to the building was controlled.
The Secretary General added that there were no missing items or data theft, but questioned whether the entering of the committee building is in accordance with the constitution of the martial law decree, as the NEC does not apply to those institutions that need to be controlled. Former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun told local media that the martial law troops entered due to the need to investigate allegations of election fraud. However, he did not elaborate on what those allegations are. The opposition party suggested that the move comes amid resentment from the last general election, which was won by the Democratic Party, and pledged to thoroughly investigate the background behind the attempt to take over the election committee. The NEC and National Assembly were the only 2 locations where troops were deployed, so the reason behind entering the committee building is raising further questions. An Song-jin, Arirang News.
In related news, the U.S. has reaffirmed the resilience of its alliance with South Korea amid the latter's political turmoil. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Yoon-ji tells us more.
Amid concerns about bilateral relations with the United States, South Korea's Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol on Friday held a phone call with his American counterpart, Antony Blinken. The Foreign Ministry said the 2 sides reaffirmed their commitment to the strong alliance between the 2 countries, adding that Blinken valued the strong resilience of South Korea's democracy highly and expressed hope that any future political disagreements will be resolved through peaceful and democratic processes. The U.S. State Department deputy spokesperson also said on Thursday that the partnership transcends any particular president or government on both sides. When asked about the South Korean parliament's push to impeach the president, he called the impeachment motion an internal process and said the U.S. expected to be handled in accordance with the Constitution.
We continue to support the rule of law and democracy in the ROK, which we think are the foundational pillars of our alliance.
But he said many questions are yet to be answered and said developments in South Korea are being watched with grave concern.
What I can say is that we were not notified of President Yoon's announcement in advance.
White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan had also said the U.S. learned about it on television, the same way the rest of the world did, implying that the country was caught off guard by its key ally. He told a Washington-based think tank that it was a rather dramatic announcement and that the United States was not consulted in any way. There have been concerns that this week's martial law attempt may disrupt the alliance with the United States, after the U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Kurt Campbell said President Yoon badly misjudged his decision to declare martial law, in a rare criticism of a South Korean leader. Campbell even said the move had been seen as deeply problematic and illegitimate. Citing 2 U.S. officials, Reuters reports that U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin no longer plans to travel to South Korea amid the political turmoil. The outgoing Defense Secretary had reportedly planned to travel to Seoul and Tokyo, but he will skip South Korea and only visit Japan. Seoul and Washington also postponed a session of their Nuclear Consultative Group, which is their key nuclear deterrence talks, and canceled a related military exercise that was initially scheduled to take place this week. Bae Yoon-ji, Arirang News.
On the economic front, the local stock markets and currency fluctuated today as political tension heightens. Our Park Go-nu has more.
Markets are continuing to fluctuate in South Korea following the short-lived martial law declaration. The stock markets exhibited volatility in the trading session on Friday amid rapid developments in the political turmoil caused by the crisis over the impeachment of President Yoon Suk-yeol. Panic selling by individual investors during the day resulted in the benchmark Kospi closing at 2,428, down 0.56% from the previous session. The index initially started higher, but once tumbled to the 2,400 mark, amid ruling party leader Han Dong-hoon's calls for the president to be swiftly suspended from his duties. Han's calls were a change of stance from the day before. In addition, the tech-heavy Kosdaq fell 1.43% from the previous session, closing at 661. During the trading session, it hit a low around the 650 mark, the lowest intraday level in 55 months. The Korean won depreciated further against the greenback on Friday compared to the previous day, closing at 1,419.2, the highest level in more than 2 years. Amid continuous market volatility, Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok discussed measures to deal with the issue during an emergency meeting of regulators. The authorities said they will continue to oversee the situation with a 24-hour response system, monitored by a related task force that was activated on Thursday. During a meeting with several foreign chambers of commerce, Choi said he would ensure a stable investment environment for foreign companies, regardless of the political situation. On Friday, international credit rating agency Fitch Ratings stated that political risk in South Korea, which could last for several months, may see a drop in the country's investment rating. However, it added that the situation appears to be being managed due to the related regulators' prompt action, noting residual risk would not affect Korea's credit ratings by Fitch. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
Strong shipments of semiconductors served to keep Korea's current account in the black in October for the 6th month in a row. Our correspondent Lee Soo-jin reports.
South Korea's current account was in the black for the 6th straight month in October on the back of strong exports. Preliminary data released by the Bank of Korea on Friday showed that the country's overall current account balance in October logged a surplus of $9.8 billion. After swinging into the red for the first time in a year in April, the current account balance has remained in the black for 6 consecutive months. But while October's surplus was larger than that of a year earlier and the third largest on record for the month of October, it was smaller than that of September. With this latest data, the current account surplus in the first 10 months of the year tallied up to around $74 billion. The latest figures for October were mainly driven by the goods balance, which tracks exports and imports of products. It logged a surplus of $8.1 billion, remaining in the black since April last year. Exports were up 4% on year in October to $60 billion, mostly due to strong demand for semiconductors. And this marks the 13th straight month that outbound shipments have shown an increase, with chip exports surging nearly 40%. But the size of October's goods balance surplus was also smaller than last month's $10.5 billion, as exports of oil products and machinery fell. Imports dropped slightly by 0.7% as inbound shipments of raw materials such as crude oil fell nearly 4%. The services balance once again recorded a deficit amounting to $1.7 billion, smaller than that of last month, as the travel sector saw greater revenue due to an increase in tourists thanks to China's National Day holiday. When asked about the impact of the unexpected declaration and subsequent lifting of martial law on the current account balance, a Bank of Korea official said that it will be limited.
Current account balances are impacted by external conditions and policies, as well as export performance. It does not yet look like it will have enough of an impact to change the overall trend, and the impact seems limited.
The Bank of Korea also projected that looking at the current trend as well as November's exports and imports, this year's target surplus of $90 billion will be easily reached. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Over in Sweden, December isn't just a time for year-end celebrations. It's also the season to honor the year's Nobel Prize laureates during the highly anticipated Nobel Week. For this week's Arts and Culture segment, our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin joins us live from Stockholm to share more about the opening day. Yoo-jin, what's the atmosphere like over there?
Well, Tomin, I'm standing in front of the Nobel Prize Museum in Gamla stan, the old town in the heart of Stockholm. And as you mentioned, today marks the start of the Nobel Week 2024 here in Stockholm, which is a week-long celebration that will run until next Thursday. So as I'm speaking right now, we're seeing more people coming in, taking photos in front of the museum, and just absorbing this festive mood of Nobel Week. But it's not just Stockholm, Sweden. Over in Oslo, Norway, where the Peace Prize celebrations will take place, these two cities are gearing up for an exciting week honoring the Nobel Prize laureates this year, which consists of 11 individuals and one organization. And ahead of the week's opening yesterday, the press here, including myself, got an exclusive preview of what's in store for this year's festivities. First, take a look. For the greatest benefit to humankind. Those are the words of Alfred Nobel, the founder of the Nobel Prize, the prestigious accolade that has for over a century honored outstanding achievements in science, literature, and peace work. Every December, Nobel Week celebrates that year's laureates in Sweden, Alfred Nobel's home country.
It is an occasion where we put science and literature and peace work in focus. I mean, that's not done all of the time, and this is a week where we can really highlight these important achievements and reach so many people. So that is what the Nobel Week is about.
This year's Nobel Week runs from Friday to next Thursday. So I'm here at the Nobel Prize Museum, where a press conference introducing and previewing the Nobel Week has just taken place. So the museum, as you can see, is fully prepared to kickstart the week-long event, introducing this year's Nobel Prize laureates, including South Korean author Han Gang. There is plenty to enjoy leading up to the award ceremony on December 10th. Starting at the Nobel Prize Museum, there's the Nobel Creations exhibition. These dresses were created by first-year students at Beckmans College of Design in Stockholm based on their interpretations of this year's Nobel Prize winners.
And it feels like a big first step to have this publicity, and it's a great honor to interpret the prizes. And also that the Nobel Prize winners are going to see these creations.
This dress has been inspired by this year's Nobel laureate in literature, Han Gang.
It symbolizes that she's held like in a grip of silence, and then there is this hand coming in here, which is a sign of pain and relief. And hidden in the folds of the dress are texts from the books. There is a detail here of a burnt fabric, and also broken seams around the dress, and it symbolizes the trauma of war.
Outside, the Nobel Week Lights Festival will bring a festive glow to the week with 16 light installations by artists, designers, and students from Sweden and abroad, illuminating Stockholm from December 7th to 15th. As for Han Gang, she will make a press appearance at the Nobel Laureate in Literature press conference on Friday afternoon, local time. Her schedule also includes visiting local elementary schools to meet students and teachers, discussing her work at the Nobel Reading event, and of course, attending the Nobel Prize award ceremony and banquet.
Well, it certainly sounds like an eventful week ahead. While there are many activities planned, the highlight of Nobel Week is the award ceremony and, of course, banquet. Many are curious about what will be served at the banquet. Anything you can share with us?
Right. So, Tomino, food seems to always spark a great interest, especially when a big event like this comes with a grand banquet. And yesterday, the chefs who will be in charge of this year's Nobel Prize banquet were announced, and the first time in Nobel Prize history, 2 female chefs will be taking the lead. So, the banquet chef who will be in charge of the first and main courses will be Jessie Sommerstrom, while the pastry chef who will be in charge of dessert will be Frida Backe. And yesterday, these 2 chefs gave us a tiny sneak peek of what they'll serve at the banquet by introducing one ingredient that they'll use each. So for Sommerstrom, she will be using whole grains, specifically barley, and she even hinted at serving porridge for the first time in Nobel banquet history, according to the Nobel Foundation. And as for Backe, she says that she'll be serving and using apples in her dessert. But the full menu and the specific dishes will be kept secret until the actual banquet starts, which will be December 10th, 7 p.m. local time.
We are waiting for the big day, and it's not just here in Korea, but many people are excited to see Han Gang participate in this year's Nobel Week. Is there anything else you'd like to share regarding her schedule?
Absolutely. So the excitement is palpable here as well. So earlier in the morning, Hangang, along with other Nobel laureates of this year, came to the Nobel Prize Museum, which you are seeing behind me right now. Well, we're hearing that they're still inside the Nobel Prize Museum as we're speaking. So this is a long-standing Nobel tradition where each laureate signs a chair at the Bistro Nobel and also donates one personal artifact to the museum that best represents or symbolizes who they are as well as their major achievements. And we'll get to see an up-close look of these artifacts later today during a press conference in the afternoon. But what I think is a big grand highlight for today, Chongmin, is a Nobel laureate in literature press conference that will start within an hour with author Hangang herself, of course, attending. And this is especially significant and drawing a lot of attention as this marks Hangang's first press conference after being named as this year's Nobel Literature Prize winner back in October. But all in all, I just want to say, as a week is just starting, I'll keep on bringing the highlights as well as some major events for this year's Nobel Week. That's all I have for now. Back to you, Tongmin.
Our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin live from Stockholm. Thank you. This weekend, it will get colder across the country. From tonight, the cold air will come down from the northwest, and the morning temperature in Seoul will be -3 degrees Celsius tomorrow and -4 degrees on Sunday and Monday. The western parts of the country are likely to receive another round of light rain or snow over the weekend. On the other hand, the East Coast is drying up. The dry weather warnings issued in eastern parts of Gangwon-do province were extended to the east coast of Gyeongsang-do provinces, including Ulsan. In addition, strong wind advisories are also in place. Please take extra precautions to prevent any wildfires. Tomorrow, Daejeon will start off at -2 degrees, Daegu 0 degrees. Highs will move up to 7 in Gwangju, Busan 10 degrees. As dry conditions continue, the risk of wildfires along the East Coast is expected to remain. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. And that is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.
How to survive in Korea. Workplace. Step 1. Lunchtime. The most important morning routine is to check today's menu. Food is essential for survival. Memorize today's menu. The highlight of office life. Lunchtime. Rice in the bottom left, soup in the bottom right. The top is for the sides. The sauce and the spoon go here. This is the basic layout, but it's a bit odd to switch rice and soup. When you're done, pour the leftovers into the soup bowl. It doesn't look that appetizing, so wait until others are done eating. Step 2. Neng, nep, nenep. These are the most used expressions at work. Choose the most appropriate form. Neng, nep, nenep. Remember that the formal ne can sound a bit stiff. Did you just say yes? Absolutely not acceptable. You want to find the right word for the right occasion. Step 3. Desteria. Desteria is the oasis in the desert. Show them your character. If you're not the diligent type, get a stooky plant. Work is tough. Laugh and the whole world laughs with you. Weep and you weep alone. Stay put, like the stooky that survives in the desert. Hang in there until the end. Of course, you can always quit. You matter more than anything else. Step 4. Survival kit. Every worker needs a survival kit. Survival kit level 1. This position gets the most exposure. Grab one when you need a sugar boost. Always keep a few treats you can offer your co-workers. Survival kit level 2. These are for hunger pangs before and after a meal. You'll need them when you take a coffee break with your office buddies. Survival kit level 3. Trash talking your boss with your soulmate. Did you survive in the workplace? Office romance? Be careful. Even the photocopier knows all the gossip.
우리 국악인 중에서 가장 원로 된 분들이 모여서 하는 악회입니다.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring today's most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gyan. December marks the second anniversary of South Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy, a pivotal moment as the region continues to sit at the heart of global politics and economic shifts. As geopolitical tensions rise, including North Korea's growing cooperation with Russia, the challenges of the Indo-Pacific are increasingly spilling over to impact countries worldwide. In Paris this month, South Korean officials, alongside experts and policymakers, are exploring ways to deepen the country's influence in the region, particularly through enhanced economic security, technological collaboration, and strategic alliances. With the Indo-Pacific's critical role in global stability and prosperity, dialogue and cooperation between South Korea and international partners, including France, seems more urgent than ever. For a deeper discussion on this, we connect to our reporter Oh Soo-young, who is in Paris to attend an international session on the Indo-Pacific. Welcome, Soo-young.
Lovely to be here, Morgan. Thanks for inviting me.
And also joining us from Bangkok is an expert on France's foreign policy, Arnaud Rouveau, Associate Professor at University Paris Dauphine. Great to have you, Professor.
Thank you for the invitation.
So let's start with Soo-young. South Korea this month marks 2 years since it released its Indo-Pacific strategy. And ahead of the milestone, you're in Paris attending an international session on the Indo-Pacific region. First, give us an idea of the core elements of the strategy and how it changed from the past.
Sure, Morgan. So as you mentioned, South Korea released its Indo-Pacific strategy in December 2022. And of course, the Indo-Pacific is a geopolitical concept. And South Korea's own strategy for the region was rather significant in marking this transition from its traditional diplomatic focus on 4 countries on relations with the U.S., Japan, China and Russia to the broader region, stretching from the Korean Peninsula to the Indian Ocean as well as to the Pacific. Of course, South Korea's foremost priority is security related on deterring North Korea. And South Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy highlights how Pyongyang poses a threat to the peace and prosperity of the world's most consequential region, and also sets out policies for deeper engagement with countries beyond its traditional partners. Now, the strategy is grounded in 9 core pillars, each reflecting a commitment to inclusivity and cooperation. Now, this includes building a regional order based on universal norms and values, promoting the rule of law and human rights, and strengthening non-proliferation, of course, and counter-terrorism efforts, as well as expanding comprehensive security cooperation. Economically, it focuses on enhancing supply chain resilience and economic security networks, while fostering collaboration in cutting-edge technologies and bridging the digital divide that we see between nations. The strategy also underscores leadership in countering joint challenges like climate change, energy security, as well as engaging in tailored development partnerships. So in the past, diplomatic experts have pointed out that Seoul has mostly focused on forming trade relations and economic relations with countries beyond its traditional partners. But what differentiates the Indo-Pacific strategy now is that it clearly goes beyond economic goals to embrace its broader vision of both national and economic security, technological leadership and sustainable development, really reflecting the changing dynamics of the Indo-Pacific region. And I would say this reinforces South Korea's broader foreign policy vision of being a global pivotal state, which is a country that reinforces a liberal international order and contributes to the peace and prosperity of the world.
Right, and now that 2 years have already passed, and given the current geopolitical changes that have been occurring, what are the key areas where South Korea aims to have a stronger influence, Soo-young?
Well, in response to all these emerging challenges and geopolitical rifts and all these regional dynamics, South Korea is prioritizing its strategic presence in the Indo-Pacific region in key areas like economic security, advanced technology, and supply chain resilience. And to do so, it's launched strategic dialogue channels since it launched its Indo-Pacific strategy in areas like supply chain, semiconductors, advanced technologies like quantum, and biopharmaceuticals, with not only regional partners, including the U.S., Japan, US and Japan, but also with countries like India and even European nations. The government is also working to establish robust international cooperation on setting global standards as well as norms for such emerging industries. South Korea has also hosted the AI Safety Summit, as well as another key summit on safe and responsible use of AI for military domain, and published a cybersecurity plan, among other key efforts. Additionally, South Korea is enhancing its role in maritime and regional regional security partnerships, particularly with countries that share a commitment to a rules-based order. So in this regard, Seoul is really expanding its scope of diplomacy since it released its Indo-Pacific strategy 2 years ago. It's doing so in a geographical sense as well, quite physically, as South Korea also held its first bilateral summits with entire continents and regions like the Pacific Island Forum, the African Union, and it's going to hold its first ever summit with 5 Central Asian countries next year. So these efforts, again, reflect South Korea's global pivotal state vision, which aligns with these ongoing global efforts to address common challenges and also opportunities as well.
Right. Now, let's also bring Professor Luvo to the conversation. France was the first European country to articulate an Indo-Pacific strategy. Professor, what were the main factors that motivated France to establish such a strategy?
Yes, indeed. France was the very first European country to adopt an Indo-Pacific strategy in 2019. This strategy was revised in February 2022, just a few days before the beginning of the war in Ukraine. The French Indo-Pacific strategy calls for providing solutions to security, economic, health, climate, and environmental issues in the regions. But more importantly, this is also a question of sovereignty. We need to remember that France has overseas territories both in the Indian and the Pacific Oceans. Around 1.5 million people are living in these territories, which are covering around 90% of the exclusive economic zone of France, which is the second largest in the world. Such territories are like in Indian Ocean, like Mayotte or Reunion Island, and in the Pacific, New Caledonia, French Polynesia, or Wallis and Futuna. So when the concept, the idea of Indo-Pacific start to be elaborated in Japan and in India, France felt very much comfortable in it, in a way that this concept was putting a word on a reality which was already existing. But beside the sovereignty issue, Indo-Pacific is crucial for 3 main reasons. The first one, now Indo-Pacific is the economic powerhouse of the world. Second, this is where international norms are now being challenged. We can think about maritime affairs in the South China Sea, but also in terms of nuclear proliferation with what is happening in North Korea. And this is also where the Sino-American rivalry is taking shape, and it's very important to be here to monitor and to understand what is happening. But there are also some additional reasons. Such as the spillover of local crises to a regional or a global level. We can remember, for instance, the COVID-19 pandemic. But also there is an increased connection between security challenges in the Euro-Atlantic area and the Indo-Pacific. For instance, the fact that North Korea sent troops to Russia to help the country in the war in Ukraine is a perfect illustration on how our security challenges are intertwined. What is happening in the Korean Peninsula have a direct impact in the security of the European continent, but what is happening in the European continent also have consequences in Northeast Asia in terms of security and stability.
Right. So it's very intertwined. And amid this situation, Professor, what are the biggest challenges and opportunities in the region for France?
Well, we are used to say that the 21st century is the Asian century, but also a maritime century. So to still be relevant as a power, France, but also other European countries, need to strengthen their presence and their participation to Asian multilateral forum and to contribute to the defense of common standards such as freedom of navigation and common goods such as maritime security, protection of diversity, and of course to contribute to the regional connectivity. And one of the main challenges we are facing now is geopolitical uncertainty, strategic unpredictability, and the decline of multilateralism. Usual rules are now being challenged, and alternatives are not very well defined or not very attractive. So in this very volatile context, the best option for France is to work alongside like-minded partners such as South Korea to try to maintain stability and balance through a comprehensive and multilateral approach.
Right, so the unpredictability of today's geopolitical landscape even highlights stronger partnerships like the one between South Korea and France. Now, speaking of which, Professor, has the strategic value of South Korea increased in the area over recent years? And I wonder, what's your perception of South Korea as a partner in the Indo-Pacific?
Well, strategic values of South Korea increase at multiple levels, in terms of economic exchange, investment, technologies. I will just mention semiconductor, culture, soft power, but also in defense industry. South Korea now is one of the key players worldwide in terms of export of military equipment. So South Korea is a key contributor to the balance of powers in many parts of the world. South Korea is also very dynamic in diplomatic arena. So even if MICTA seems to have lost its momentum, South Korea created and developed some other forums, such as the Korea-Africa Summit, which took place very recently, Korea-ASEAN Summit, but also since last year, the Korea-Pacific Islands Summits. And it has to be noted that 2 French territories are participating to the summits through the Pacific Islands Forum, which are New Caledonia and Polynesia. And on the agenda of this forum, there is sustainable development, climate change, environment, disaster management, maritime affairs, fisheries, and all these points are also on the French agenda in the region. So there is a common perception between South Korea and France on the challenges that the region is facing. So this common perception should lead to a better coordination and cooperation to try to propose common answers.
Now, to Professor Louveau, what strength is France contributing to the stability and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific? And in what ways do you think France and South Korea could cooperate?
Well, France maintains a permanent military presence in the regions, with always around 8,000 servicemen, navies, and ships. And they play a central role in terms of cooperation through their participation to joint operation or training programs. They especially play a key role in terms of humanitarian disaster relief. We saw it very recently in Vanuatu, but also in Tonga, Fiji, or even in the Philippines. In addition, France deploys very regularly some other assets of its navy in the regions. For instance, the air carrier Charles de Gaulle will soon be in Indo-Pacific for a dedicated mission named Clemenceau 2025, and it will stop over in many countries in the region. And one of the objectives of this mission is to develop interoperability with allies and partners, and also to participate to joint training, especially with the 7 fleets of the American Navy. We can also remind that earlier this year, France deployed fighter jets and military aircraft jointly with some other European partners in Asia to participate to several exercises such as Arctic defense, Pitch Black in Australia, or Tarang Shakti in India. So in terms of economy, I think around 18% of French import are coming from Indo-Pacific, and 14% of its export are going to Indo-Pacific. And in terms of FDI, we estimate that there is around 130 billion euro invested in the regions. For the French Development Agency, the agency has a stock of around 9 billion euro in the region. It's covering around 25% of all its investments worldwide, and the regions receive around 1/5 of the loans granted by the French Treasury. And around 90% of these loans are related to infrastructure and digital connectivity. So the French strengths are almost on the same line as Korean development goals in the regions, especially in terms of humanitarian assistance, biodiversity, protection of the environment, digital connectivity, and also on shared values and respect of the rule of law.
Right, so there is definitely room for more collaboration between the two countries. Now, what about from South Korea's perspective, Soo-young? In what further ways could the two sides cooperate?
Well, I completely agree with what the professor just said. And of course, with South Korea and France being formidable military powers, and with both nations being very innovative powers, they have all these cutting-edge technologies. There's already been a great level of interest in defense cooperation, particularly in terms of like cybersecurity. Also, R&D cooperation in strategic industries crucial to both national and economic security, such as artificial intelligence. So I'd say going forward, both nations could deepen ties in areas like maritime security through joint naval exercises, also counter-piracy initiatives in the region. There's also significant potential for cooperation in climate-related initiatives and green technologies as well, particularly in renewable energy and also climate technologies, especially when it comes to working with countries in the Pacific Island Forum. Now, France is already very much engaged in offering that kind of climate resilience partnership with countries in the Pacific Island Forum. And South Korea, of course, has its own experience of developing very customized technologies and sort of innovation policies for sustainable development. So if they put their heads together, I think the impact could be great.
Right, so we're going to expect a lot of areas of cooperation between the two countries. But what about challenges? What kind of challenges await South Korea and France in the region?
Well, of course, we have shared security concerns, first of all, in the Indo-Pacific, primarily the North Korea threat, of course, and its growing links to the Ukraine war. So South Korea and France, they really have this joint concern when it comes to nuclear proliferation, given the North Korea example, so they can actively cooperate in that regard. And France already, of course, actively participates in surveillance operations concerning compliance with international sanctions against North Korea. And with South Korea being a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council for a 2-year term, I think they have a greater chance to really work together on dampening these efforts by North Korea for nuclear and missile proliferation. Mm-hmm. Also, the two countries face challenges when it comes to the geopolitical rivalry, again, within the Indo-Pacific region. And because South Korea and France both share the view that we need to cooperate and compete with China where necessary, and also promote the values of freedom, peace, and prosperity. They really need to take more, I guess they can try and take more tangible actions to promote multilateral platforms and promote multilateralism, especially as promoted by ASEAN countries. Both South Korea and France are committed to supporting the ASEAN centrality and the regional bloc's outlook on the Indo-Pacific as well. So hopefully South Korea and France can continue to partner in this and face up to these joint challenges together.
Now, Professor Louvo, the French Indo-Pacific strategy emphasizes multilateralism, security, and sustainable development, as you touched upon a while ago. Now, with geopolitical tension and economic uncertainty expected to continue with the incoming second Trump administration, how should the two countries respond?
Well, the new Trump administration will come into power at a moment where executive powers with their allies in Europe, Germany and France, but also in Northeast Asia, Japan and South Korea, are getting weaker. And it will not help these countries in their discussion with the new U.S. administration. Under his first mandate, Donald Trump was dealing with relatively stronger administration in these countries. Nevertheless, he tried to push the line to get more benefits from his partner, with some success. For instance, now most of NATO members are really spending at least 2% of their GDP in defense. We remember also how difficult were the negotiations on cost sharing for the presence of U.S. troops in Korea. So with weaker administration in all these countries, we can expect Trump to try to go a bit further and to ask for more concession from its partner, and it won't be any easy talk. So it's quite important now that executive and countries who are like-minded partners and allies kind to share more a common position to deal with the new American administration. On security issues, also, we saw over the last few years a rapprochement between NATO and some Indo-Pacific partners, such as South Korea, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand. The Biden administration even tried to say that it was favorable to institutionalize this relationship. At least this is what Deputy Deputy State Secretary Kurt Campbell said in Seoul last July. So even if I don't believe about a withdrawal of the U.S. from NATO, maybe the Trump administration might try to revise or renegotiate its participation and to ask more effort from its allies and partners. So by weakening NATO in a way or another, it will have consequences on the relationship of this organization with its Indo-Pacific partners.
Right.
So now it's time for European NATO members, but also for Indo-Pacific partners to accept more responsibility and therefore to cooperate more together with or without the American support.
Stepping up cooperation would be crucial. Now, I'm afraid we'll have to wrap up our discussion at this point. Many thanks to Professor Louvo and, of course, our Soo-young for your insights tonight. We appreciate it.
Pleasure.
That'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and engaged.
Contour the world, simply contour. Hello, I'm your Simply MC.